Thank you, Mr. Bharat. Our next speaker is, as Mr. Bharat Bhagat mentioned, Advocate Nappinai. She is an advocate practicing before the Supreme Court of India and a cyber law expert. She is also an advisor to the Maharashtra Cyber Police. She believes that the law is not just about degrees and certificates, it's all about, or more so, about knowledge and hard work. Let's give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to Advocate Nappinai.
Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's really lovely to see all of you out here on a Sunday morning, and you voluntarily signed up to listen about law. I'm impressed, right? Let's start off with what the earlier speaker finished off with, right? I promised and I have to deliver on the feelings aspect. I really love that one input one of you gave about feelings coming from past experiences. I'm here to speak about data protection, right? The law part, we'll keep it aside for a bit now. Where did this construct of data protection emanate, right? You had needs. You had wants. You wanted convenience. You wanted a situation where if I shop in a particular way and I go into this shop every day, the shopkeeper is supposed to know what is it that I need, what would I want without having to be told. Every time I walk in for breakfast at the hotel I stay in, I will expect customized service. Right? So when we started looking for that customization, what we did not realize was what we are going to be giving up on the anvil of convenience. It was privacy. I always say that the opposite or the enemy of privacy is not surveillance, it's convenience. Because for the sake of convenience, we will tell Alexa the kind of feelings we have, the kind of requirements we have, and I'll come to why I'm saying feelings are being automated today, right? Every aspect of our life is now captured somewhere. I was going to, in fact, use this experience I had. I'm going to use the word experience and feelings a lot, which was not originally intended for the session. Yesterday, I was at a blues show. So I was just thinking, here I am at a blues show with my mobile. That's all a marketer needs. He knows that I like blues then because that's literally one of the biggest blues shows in Asia. So you know where you are, you know what you're there for, and therefore you can be targeted, right? For more blues shows or music shows, for tickets to those shows, for buying CDs, maybe, right? These are all the innocuous marketing gimmicks that are done using your data. That's why I've used the word by choice here. You gave away all of your information knowing that you were doing it because you thought that some convenience will come to you. I remember one of the earliest sessions I was giving on data where somebody said, oh, but I love it when Alexa knows what music I like. But that's not the only thing that Alexa knows. So then, when we are saying Alexa knows what music I like, and it's going to play music the way I want it at any particular time, are we not then treading into this territory of feelings? Are we not automating feelings by saying that Alexa knows what mood I am in at that point of time? She can read my tone and say, oh, today Nappinai feels a little low on energy. Let's pepper up with this kind of, hard rock music. Oh, today she's sounding mellow and nice. Let me give her a Carnatic classical concert, right? Are we not then automating feelings? Very quickly, another very dangerous move. Dangerous on many counts, okay? Somebody talked about dogs and feelings, right? Do you know what is the most popular dog for today? Anybody? Sorry? Huh? No, dog. Which is the favorite dog for most people? Labrador, yeah, I wish, right? It's Sony's Aibo. Okay, it's a dog, which is a robo, which will come wag its tail at you, which will know how to react to you based on how you look when you walk into a house. Okay? How many of us think feelings there? How many of us think data protection there? How many of us think privacy there? On one hand, why is it that Aibo is more favored than the Labrador or Poodle or whatever, right? Easier maintenance. You can switch off Aibo. You can't switch off the Labrador, right? That's like a baby. You have to take care of it. Here you can switch it off. So then you want your feelings to be met and automated so, and yet you want your privacy, but you don't really understand the construct of privacy there. How does Aibo work? Aibo has not one but two cameras. One on its back to tell it where all the articles are in your house, because otherwise how does it navigate around like any other dog, right? The second part, the feelings part, it reads your face. So the second camera is on its nose to see you. And then the reason why it's necessary, here it comes, right? It can identify and distinguish between whom it perceives as owner as opposed to a guest. It can modulate its behavior based on that identification. It modulates its behavior based on your reading of your face. This is what I meant by saying feelings are being automated today. If it were only stopping there, things would have been fine. Let me now move on to the next part of what I wanted to cover in my presentation. It's bad enough when the world knows what you want, what you feel, what you think you need, and it is going to cater to it. Imagine the world which starts telling you how you should live it, how you should conduct yourself, what is it that you should eat, how should you dress, everything. It starts dictating your behavior. So that is why I like that input that came in the earlier session on past experiences. What is the relevance of past experiences to data protection? Automation, again, right? The only thing that AI does, and it thrives and it functions purely on that, and guess what that is? Past experiences. So that is precisely the very point that was made to show why feelings can't be automated, unfortunately, is the basis on which data is automated about you and your behavior is modulated based on that. So this is what I wanted to focus on, because there is a very fallacious thought process in people's mind that data is all, it's a lot of hype when we talk about protection of personal data. I have heard this very scary statement which says, if you have nothing to hide, what's your problem about sharing? Right? I don't know which is more scary. Is it this statement which says that if you have nothing to hide, share, or the alternative narrative which says, oh, but what's the big deal? Who cares about who has my data? How does it matter if now the whole world knows that I like the blues, right? Let's just share and be happy, and in the process, if I get something free, I'm telling you, that's the scariest four-letter word, free. The kind of things we give away for it, right? So if I get something free, if I get some benefit out of it, like Alexa knowing what music it has to play without me having to choose, why not? Where does the problem lie? Twofold, and that's why I've used this image, which is a panopticon, right? The construct of a panopticon. Very simply put, what does the panopticon say? It says that if you put people in these, this is actually the picture of cells. So this was a construct from a prison concept, where they said that if you put people in the prison under surveillance, generally, there is a better chance of them behaving themselves than when they are not under surveillance. Scale up that surveillance in a manner where everybody is told that 24/7 we are watching you. It doesn't matter where you go, what you do, we are watching you. How would it modulate their behavior? And that is where the construct of the chilling effect comes, which means, and I'm going to use the same example of yesterday. It was a lovely evening where people were literally letting go. In most instances, when you go to a blues concert, the average age group is above 40 or 50, right? Where nowadays the youngsters are getting revived interest in the blues, but broadly you're looking at a much older demographic at a concert like this. And yet, they let their hair down. They're all people who are probably heading organizations like all of you, and they're all senior management, etc. Professionals, of course. And yet, when they're at that concert, they happily let their guard down and dance away as if nobody is watching. You know the standard line on that, right? When they are conducting themselves like that, let's just put them in a panopticon position and say, oh, we are watching you all the time. We are going to, record everything that you're doing the minute you enter this concert hall. How will everybody behave? Probably the way all of y'all are seated and nicely well behaved, right? At this very professional conference. Nobody is going to let their hair down and dance away to glory, right? So this is the chilling effect. Now just take this construct to all the data that you are sharing, your past experiences aspect that you mentioned, and add it up, right? That's why this is the one which has the Facebook symbol, because that literally has created the panopticon situation today, where you're being monitored all the time. And not just through one surveillance camera, but multiple surveillance cameras. What does it give you? And I'm going to just show you some instances which will show that it's not just about using your feelings and automating it, but kind of modulating your feelings to kind of make you believe this is actually what you want. Cambridge Analytica, all of you all know that, right? What did it do? All it did was it took your data, automated it, and then started telling you, it dictated your choices. It did not just follow your choices. And this, my friends, is the real risk in terms of automation and data protection. And this is what law is supposed to protect us from or against. Not just data for your convenience, not just data by consent or choice, not just data for the sake of marketing, but against data for profiling, against data for surveillance, and against data as a chilling effect. Let's just quickly see how is this going to happen, right? We all know that this is everywhere. Do you realize how much of data we are giving away in the process of all our enthusiasm about new age technology and new devices? I'm all for devices, I'm not against it, but we need to exercise caution when we adapt to evolving technologies. You cannot eschew it, you can't walk away. I mean, just a very quick pause here. How many of you do not have smartphones? Only one smart person in the room. Well, I am a culprit too, right? Very smart, very smart. Okay, why? It's mandatory. Oh, of course, Kesnur. I didn't recognize you from here. Welcome. Naturally. I will therefore not ask questions about who is not on social media because it's also mandatory for him to not be there. You will probably have one hand up. Yes, sir.
You will give special prize today.
Yes. You will actually be given your memento after your session, therefore. So let's just talk about, is it only smartphones we are talking about? And am I just raising a bogey when I say that your conduct, your behavior can be modulated? Let me just quickly run through to stories, because that's what I do. I also just tell stories. So don't worry about me coming here to bore you out of your wits with law, right? But I can tell you, law is fascinating. So let's just see, before we end off, how law can help you. So let me move on very quickly to the stories I wanted to share, right? See, all this you would have got if it hadn't been for the feelings part of it, huh? So anyway, do we think all those gadgets on the screen are data providers? That they leak data about you? Such innocuous things, right? Let's just move forward to a few more. Shoes. Did you ever think your shoes were sharing data? Yeah? Baby monitors? Absolutely. What kind of data is it sharing? It's not just about your usage, etc. One of the biggest leaks that happens is not just about what you feed into these devices. It's also about what they are collecting without your knowledge. So a recent disclosure showed that all of your Google assistants are probably hearing even personal conversations and personal data in your bedrooms, to be more precise, when you did not know about it. But did you consent to it? Actually, you'll be shocked to hear that you did, right? You would have probably opted for the always-on mode, and therefore you, through your actions, consented to certain things happening. Why? This is why I told you all, convenience, right? You thought it was so convenient to have Alexa on always, and therefore you allowed for this data leak to happen. You thought baby monitors were a convenience, but you did not think that they are actually an army which can be used to attack an entire country. Liberia had its internet brought down with an army of tea kettles and baby monitors and, very ironically, security cameras. So what we forget is devices are also computing devices, right? They are as vulnerable for a data breach as are your smartphones or your computers. We may think about antivirus, etc. for computers. Some of us think it's necessary for mobiles, but no one believes or understands that you need the same level of security for any kind of device. So we don't even know that these devices come with a password. They are all factory set, and we don't change them. And why is it relevant for you all? You're all in project management. And therefore, I wanted to emphasize on these aspects of security glitches at the lowest possible level and not just the big picture, right? We need to be careful at every stage in any form of profession or engagement we have which involves devices. Moving forward very, very quickly, one of my favorites, right? Who amongst us did not love all those gadgets? I know all you millennials in the crowd, please ignore, okay? This is for the, my demographic age out there, right? We loved all those. And that's the hook and bait, right? Once we are baited, once we start believing we need this, We need to share our past experiences for it to get automated and for us to then be fed the outcome in terms of what is going to be told to us on what we need. First, a car will tell you, oh, you always order cappuccino. So here we are driving into this, a drive-through, and it will say, oh, why don't you order a cappuccino? I can order it in advance for you and have it ready at the counter for you to pick it up. And then it tells you what you need. So you may order a cappuccino, but it will tell you, no, are you sure you just want a cappuccino? Don't you want this brand so-and-so? And then again, convenience prevails and you say, oh, what the heck, why should I think about it? Why don't I just go with it, right? We, in our time, read books by opening a book and, turning the pages. We would be experimental. I would go spend a whole day in a library to see what are the new things that are coming, what is a new genre of book that I would love to read. Today, Amazon Prime will tell you that, oh, you would like to read this. Heaven help you when you're sharing your Amazon Prime account and you get all kinds of weird suggestions, right? But then, do we experiment any longer, or do we just allow our choices to be dictated, right? They control your lives. And how? Because it's convenience. It's just very easy, right? We just sell our soul for the sake of convenience. I have another, I think, 4 minutes. So before I miss out on these aspects, let me quickly run through to some of the key issues I wanted to cover. So these are all just some of the other instances, but I just wanted to tell you all about this whole Cambridge Analytica aspect. If you think it was just a one-off case, believe me, it's not. That's why I wanted to give all these different instances. From the food you have to your choice in elections, everything can be modulated and is being modulated. And the other scary part, how are you being read? So there's a Stanford study which talks about how, and of course they used a demographic in terms of one particular area in the US, and they were able to predict what way you will vote based on the car you drove. I'm sure people in Delhi must be wondering, oh, I wish I can use that to find out before 11th, right? So, but then these are all possible. These are feasible, right? So when we talk about hacking and data breaches, it's not just about corporate data. We are talking about individual data points also, which are going to cause harm. And why is it that when you're talking about project management, you still have to worry about the law? So now we come to the crux of it, which I will finish in just 2 slides. One, the law tells you that you have to take consent today, right? I'm going to come to Puttaswamy later. I'm just going to use this one slide for clarification. So people believe that India is waiting for a data protection law. It's wrong. We already have a data protection regime. People believe that whatever we have, whatever India has currently, those of the few who believe that we have a law for data protection, think that the laws are very minimal and you don't really have to do much. Again, wrong. So when you look at these principles, what we call the data principles to begin with, which European Union had, UK had, etc., all those 8 principles were already captured and are existing under current Indian law. It is not as if we don't have a data protection regime. The problem is that it has not been effectively implemented. That's where the problem arises. So you still needed consent, you needed to disclose the purpose for which you are collecting the data, you needed to disclose what you intended to do with the data, who you intend to share it with, how long you intend to keep it, what is the process you've put in place for it to be deleted, and also where else is it likely to be transferred, meaning outside the shores of India, right? All of it is already there. You have two provisions under the Information Technology Act dealing with it, and also rules framed thereunder which set out the data principles. The difficulty is, if most people, including professionals, believe we don't have a data protection regime, imagine the plight of commoners, right? I mean, when I say commoners, I don't mean to make an elite versus a commoner. I only mean to say the layperson, right? Imagine their plight. So this is where we stand in lack of enforcement today. And today, where we have not really set up an effective data protection regime, even with the minimalistic laws that we have, we want to jump forward to a GDPR kind of regime, right? Where does it all emanate? Everybody makes this mistake. All of you all, I'm sure, know about the privacy judgment from the Supreme Court. Unanimous 9-judge bench said privacy indeed is a fundamental right. How many of you all think that privacy became a fundamental right because of the Supreme Court judgment? How many of you believe that the Supreme Court gave you this fundamental right, right? It didn't. It just acknowledged that you already had this fundamental right. How many of you think that the Constitution of India gave you this fundamental right of privacy? Right? Again, the Constitution merely acknowledges it. It adapted it, and that is why it is considered part of what we call the basic structure construct, right? Because you already had it as a right. And there were certain human rights which the Constitution believed had to be captured and protected under fundamental rights, and it did that. It didn't give it to you, it acknowledged it and ensured and guaranteed its continued protection. That's the distinction. Once we understand that, we will know the importance of data protection laws. We will know that data protection is not about just a compliance regime where we are going to keep tick marking. It is not about us telling the world, oh, we also have something equivalent to GDPR, so we now qualify as a jurisdiction to which you can transfer your data, because this is the problem we have today. India globally is not recognized as a jurisdiction which has effective data protection laws, and therefore we are losing out on business. It was very interesting to hear you, sir, about the trillion-dollar business opportunities that India is looking at. Who amongst us would not want that kind of a business opportunity, right? All of us want it. The issue is not about whether we want it or not. The issue is about how are we going to get it. How are we going to maximize or monetize on this wealth? India admittedly has one of the largest wealth in data. It has already been mined and used extensively. We need to jump in at the earliest point of time to monetize it or maximize it along with protecting it. The balance we need today is to ensure that business will thrive because of this wealth of data, but are not at the cost of every one of us as individuals, not at the cost of feelings being automated, not at the cost of our choices being dictated. That's the balance we need to draw, and I'm going to stop with this so that I give enough time for questions and answers. But let me just quickly close with where do we stand today. The Puttaswamy judgment told not just the world that yes, privacy of course is a fundamental right in India unequivocally. It also said we need more effective data protection laws. More than 2 years have passed, actually nearly 3. And we are still struggling with the ideal mean for exactly what I just said. You know, monetizing data versus protecting individual rights. The 2019 Personal Data Protection Bill, which is on the anvil, has the same problems even today. It does not know where to draw the line. So for all of you who think consent rules, believe me, consent only rules in a very, very minimalistic manner. So you have very, very low roles to play in the manner in which your data is going to be used. Our concerns are twofold. One is under the guise of marketing, are we going to be subjected to profiling? not just for marketing purposes, but also for other purposes like what we just talked about, elections, to just give one example. The second is, of course, surveillance, the Panopticon effect, which I started off with. So on this note, I don't mean to leave you all with a bleak note. I would rather say that good or bad, it's a good thing if India gets itself a much more robust regime, and we can always see how it pans out going forward. And I'm sure that anything that is put forth finally is going to be tested on the anvil of judicial review. On that note, over to you all for question and answers, please. Yes.
What should we be doing right now personally, right? Because we see the need to reach out to people to run our businesses or profession. At the same time, we don't want to be governed by our emotions to be governed, which I truly agree. So as you have more compliance and things being put in place, what should we be doing?
Can you hold the mic closer?
Yeah, what should we be doing right now?
As a business, I would say that the first, this is always my advice and I stand by it. There are two thresholds that you can comply with. One is compliance and the other is conformance. The difference is when you start looking at regulations as just a tick mark, it's a nuisance value which you don't have a choice but to comply with. You will just do that which is essential. Conformance is where you believe that what the law has mandated is for everybody's good. And it's your duty to comply with that at that threshold, that is conformance. So my advice to all businesses out here will be, remember, let's just take small to large. You are putting CCTV cameras, for instance, maybe in a project. You're dealing with a project where data is being collected and you're dealing with AI or, its processes. Whether it's physical world issues or the digital world ones, remember that if there is an ethical aspect, if there is a legal aspect, don't just pitch for the low-hanging fruit. I know it's a very easy limit to set for yourself. But when you pitch higher, the advantage you get is you become the best there. And that's why I love the introduction where she said, I do, and I believe, I don't know where she got that from, but yes, I believe in that. I believe that, skimming the surface is not enough. You need to go deep. So I would say balance it, one, from the perspective of what you have to do, and also from the perspective of what you ought to do. Right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful session. I'm Rajesh Tatlani. I have two questions, brief ones. It was nice to know that we have been acknowledged, but that's necessary but not sufficient. We also need implementation.
Yes.
For that, what are those things, maybe awareness like these sessions, at an individual level, project level, organizational level, as citizens level also. Like we had seen the Citizen Lab coming out, and then we got to know, and even then after 6 months, nothing was really responded.
Can you confirm what is the sector you're in, so that I can answer more precisely?
I'm an agile coach.
Okay.
I coach on processes, so I'm a protector
so
of a process.
is your question specific to a sector or an industry?
Not really to a sector. I'm talking about at organizational as well as a citizen level, as an individual level on data protection. The second part is about this content policy plan. I believe the Mozilla Foundation, GitHub, Cloudflare, and I'm referring to the Amanda Kenton appeal on this policy for content policing.
Okay, I'm not.
So what could
Can
what has
you
been the
just sum up
response?
your question again?
So my
because
question
it
is,
seemed to have
how
two
do we
parts.
ensure implementation? We have acknowledgement, as you said, from the Supreme Court and the Constitution. How do we have
implementation of our right to privacy?
Yeah, and the second
Would
one
I
was,
be correct in summing up your question?
Yes, right.
To say that how do we ensure effective implementation of our right to privacy, right? So the first level actually we crossed with the Puttaswamy judgment, which is acknowledging unequivocally that we do have the right. The second level will be to have effective laws and regulations which will ensure that this right is duly protected. The law and regulation will also have to set out the extent to which this right will be protected and in what manner. The third most important thing, if they are laying down certain guidelines in terms of do's and don'ts, which corporates amongst others will have to follow, it will also lay down what are the penalties for that violation. There will always be civil and criminal penalties. Okay? Today, we have very stringent civil penalties under the proposed PDP bill, where it could amount to even 4 or 2% of your global turnover, right? They were very, very open-ended and stringent criminal provisions also. My opinion is that thankfully a lot of it was dropped because they were so open-ended that it would only lend itself to abuse. Today we have very limited criminal provisions which primarily deals with re-identification of de-identified data, meaning once it has been, I would not use the word anonymized because in the bill they draw a fine distinction between what is identified and de-identified as opposed to anonymized. So, but in layperson words, if I were to use the words of what you mean by de-identified, that which cannot identify the individuals comprising the data set, right? So, in such situation where you have civil and criminal penalties, the final leg of every law and what it is, I am going down to absolute first principles here. Why do we need laws or why do we have laws in a society? It is not just meant to punish, it is meant more to deter. We all stop committing offenses because we know the consequences of committing those offenses. We have had how many data breaches over just the last 2 years? I already told you it is not like India doesn't have a data protection regime. It also has a very simple methodology of filing of an application before what is called as the adjudicating officer for offenses like data breaches. Okay, I am simplifying it, very simple. And in India today, we don't have this officer appointed. So what happened was the government identified the Secretary Ministry of IT as the adjudicating officer. So we have this post today. We have had data breaches from Amazon, from Uber, from XYZ. Every single data breach has involved, and of course Cambridge Analytica also. Every single data breach has involved several million data points of Indians. How many cases have you heard of an Indian filing against, for a violation under Section 43A of the IT Act before an adjudicating officer? Even for 1 rupee, forget about several hundred millions. Why is it that we keep relying even today on decisions from the European Court of Justice or an ICO or an FTC of US for us to show the importance of data protection and not to Indian case laws? It is not for want of law, it's for want of implementation. If there is one judgment that comes out of a jurisdiction showing that the jurisdiction treats its laws very seriously, that anybody who violates the law, anybody who affects or impacts the data of Indians will be penalized, then we will be taken seriously. So what we really need, and that's why I finished off with that, was that we need effective enforcement. Without that, we are a dead letter.
Hello.
Yes.
I have one question. For all those who have smartphones like you and me. So we download any app, and then when you download an app, the first thing they ask, can we use, allow, deny? So we are in a catch-22 situation. If you allow, you don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
If you deny, of course, you don't get to use the app. So what do we have a choice?
So the first thing is remember to exercise caution when you are downloading apps. Earlier we would say always download from the the store, of the particular thing. It could be a Google store, it could be a, for Android phones, whichever, Sony store, etc., right? But today, even when it's from a Play Store, be careful what you're downloading. The second thing, very important question, why go to downloading the app? Why don't we just start with buying the smartphone itself? When you buy the smartphone, it does not say that for you to even get it activated, it is going to insist on permissions to be allowed for it to access your contacts, your microphone, your camera, and everything. An app which is going to deliver your food to you wants access to your microphone and camera. Why? Why should it have access to your photographs? And why do we allow it? So I am not trying to push only one brand, but I am really happy with the kind of smartphones which allow you to customize these permissions. That should be made mandatory, in fact, according to me, in law, and not just left open-ended for companies to adapt. So for instance, in my phone, I can customize my permissions. I can say, I want to use the app, but deny A, B, C, D, including location data. And that's something we always keep on because, again, convenience. We don't know when we are going to need to use Google Maps, right? So let's just keep locations on all the time. Suggestion, please keep it off and also switch it off for each of the apps separately, because it's not as if a data point is being collected only when you're online. Data will be collected whether you're online or offline. It is transmitted when you're online. That's all. So be careful. One, download an app where it is necessary. Okay? You may or may not really need the app. If you can do it on a browser, just use the browser. Don't download the app. If it is essential, then use an app. 2, check the credentials of the app and where it's coming from. 3, don't just adapt because 300 friends of yours have adapted. 300 people have made the mistake too, right? You don't want to be 301 on that list. So don't just adapt because your friends did or your family did. Check. And don't hesitate to ask questions about what is the data protection that is being afforded. Whether it's in the use of, for instance, after many years of my housing society using this app, and I raised this issue because I've just moved there recently, saying, why are you using this app for entry and exit? I mean, we use MyGate, for instance, right? So what is the kind of data that is being collected? What are the things you have signed off for protection of data pertaining to residents? And have you checked on how long they are using, what they are using it for, why they are using it, and when they plan to delete? And there was a blank face across the table, right? Because nobody bothered to check. It's also because we don't value our data. If India did not understand the $1 trillion potential of data till date, we didn't jump the bandwagon. It's not just because we didn't understand the business potential. We just didn't appreciate or respect the data point as a protective measure. We didn't understand the importance of what personal data is. Why is it important and why should it be protected? I think we should get that awareness first and exercise it in our everyday life.
Hi, this is Seema.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
I just want to know, like, say, for example, this period, like, it's a digital world. And suppose if you're not there, then, if you don't, say, for example, take a word, reform, perform, and transform, if you're not with the period, say, the Facebook or Insta, whatever, our kids are going to say that, we are old-aged people, So it's like, we are in a more of a dilemma where, we are coming from a period where our kids are there who are well advanced, and if we don't adapt ourselves, then we'll be left behind,
Wow.
So,
no, I said wow because this is exactly what I was just talking about offline before I came here. So my next initiative is going to be on this. I have called it Cyber Sathi. That's why I changed my Twitter handle also to say NS Nappinai Cyber Sathi. And this is exactly what I'm addressing.
yeah, because like my son, he's on Insta, and me and my husband, we are on Facebook, and he tells every hour,
dinosaurs, right? Huh.
All people, Facebook is for all people.
Yeah.
And Insta is for
Absolutely.
young generation.
Yeah.
So how do we like, I don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
I want to be with my child.
You know, how did you build your Facebook profile to begin with? Did you or your child was also there on Facebook to begin with before Instagram and all that. Do you remember that phase where you would accept all friend invites because you want to show how many friends you have?
No, I don't accept all of them.
That's because you are the dinosaur generation. Ask your child, they will tell you. For them, there was a peer pressure to show how many friends they had. So that is why I said be careful in following your friends, because they would just accept because the person would be linked to another 30 people or 100 people already who they know. They won't even think twice about why are they accepting it. So to give in the paucity of time, that's why I was actually trying to cut you short also because we were running out of time. Very quickly, you cannot avoid technology, but don't start using it out of peer pressure. Because your question, the way it's framed, is exactly the way a child thinks and not the adult thinks, right? The child thinks, oh, I can't be left behind. My friends are on Instagram, I have to be there. And we followed the herd. We followed the herd to Facebook, to WhatsApp, to Instagram, to Snapchat, to everything, right? What are we doing even with TikTok or any of the others? We are following the herd. So do we do it because we are following the herd? Or are we going to do it because it's relevant to us, right? Do we want to do it because we don't want to be tagged as dinosaurs? Or are we doing it because we have to be in that field, right? So we would be on LinkedIn, we would be on Twitter because that is relevant in today's world, but we would still exercise those options judiciously. So we need to not just act as adults in ourselves. This is something that has to be imbibed in the child also, that they are not there in a race. They are not there to follow the herd. They have to adapt judiciously based on what they want and not what is being told to them is needed for them. And two, they have to be the ambassadors carrying this message forward. With that, I'll be available for a short while to take questions offline. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Advocate Nappinai. It's been a pleasure. I think all of us will be doing a little bit of housekeeping activity in terms of all the cell phones and all the AI appliances back home once we reach, and double check the settings and maybe end up uninstalling a few apps.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please stay on the stage, and we would like Mr. Jacob Zakaria, our Vice President at Mumbai Chapter for Certifications and Training, to kindly give you a token of our appreciation for enlightening us today.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you. Oh, nice.
Past the cybersecurity.
Thank you. So we now have 15 minutes of a quick tea break, coffee break, where we can just freshen ourselves up, and then we will start immediately after. And we will be starting with some questions, so please be back on time so that you can win one of the prizes.